As you see, I've been putting together a series of tips that I've been giving out to small business owners, and this was another one I was thinking about was tips about employees. So, where my journey began was probably hiring people as soon as my early 20s. Hiring people for the job, trying to get jobs done. And one thing I always noticed about hiring people, for the most part, is that it's very tough. You're dealing with human emotions, you're dealing with human circumstances, you're dealing with a lot of stuff that has to do with just being human. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you're trying to run a business, a small business particularly, it can be cumbersome to be able to do some of these things. Um, Short story, I been working with a guy for about 13 years, and one thing I always noticed about the guy, that was super hardworking. He was very dedicated to the job, which I really, really could appreciate. And you need people like that. As you start finding out what some of his weaknesses were, I started noticing that he just had a really hard time getting along with others. Uh, you know, it became a problem. Like there was times where he would want to fist fight with a guy, or other times he would just kind of run people off, just kind of disrespect them to the point where they feel like less than human and they want to leave. I mean, obviously, I started catching on to this, but since he had a sense of loyalty, I also had a sense of loyalty as to keeping him on as an employee, And you flash forward 13 years later, and he was still doing the same thing. Nothing ever changed, which is a major, major problem because when you're trying to grow a business, the last thing you need is people to hinder the ability to be able to grow. And when you have a guy that's been with you that long and his attitude stinks, um, it's going to be very, very hard to grow your business with that human. Not that there's anything wrong with the guy, but I love the guy actually. That's the reason I kept him on for so long. But when I realized that he was hurting me more than he was actually doing me good, I really, really started to, have an internal battle as to, should I still be loyal to this guy? Do I give him another chance? Things like that, where, it's pretty clean cut if you really think about it. You know, just because you give me loyalty to show up to work, it doesn't mean that you're loyal to the cause. And if the cause is to make sure that the company's healthy and is doing what it has to do, you want to try to avoid conflict with other people, obviously, for the most part. Um, Not just that, I think that if he was really loyal, he would have wanted to grow the business. I think a lot of people get into that scarcity mentality where they don't want to teach or want you to hire other people or rely on other people because then they feel like they're worth, maybe they're less valuable in your eyes, which is not true. Ultimately it comes down to just being able to like build a team. You know, if he was really loyal to the business, he would have done what was right for the business. He just could not, get him. He was too caught up in his own life or whatever that he couldn't make those changes. So for the last since after starting to rebuild this business from the ground up. Long story made short, one day I'll put it on camera. Um, and I brought him on, and I, took responsibility for him being one of my employees. Over the last 2 years, he's probably ran off like maybe 20 people. So about 99% of people would turn around and basically tell me that this guy's attitude stink. I can't work with him. He's impossible to work with. And me being who I am, and going riding with the people who have been riding me the longest, I would always pick him over them. And after all these years, I realized that that wasn't the right thing to do. Ultimately, I should have cut him years ago, and I kept him on, and that was a big mistake. So that brings me to my first point: that if you find it in your battle to building a company or building your small business, if you find an employee that's good but for some reason doesn't fit the mold, you need to just get rid of them and cut ties immediately. just learn from my mistake. 13 years later, the guy just, was never going to work out. So no matter how many chances I gave him, nothing was ever going to change. So you have to be smart enough to be able to see these things coming, and don't let your heart make the decision that your business person and your business sense should be the one making that decision. So then the second thing this makes me think of is that you have to separate your emotions from the people that you work with. I know it sounds kind of harsh, but you have to have some sort of emotional separation between your employees and yourself. Well, one where like the most important thing is the company, and the human aspect has to leave. There's been plenty of times around Christmas time where it's slow and I'm bleeding money. And you keep people on because you want to make sure that, they're taken care of, and you put your company last, or you put yourself last, really, because you're on the company, it's a small business. Thinking back during the COVID era, we were an isolated business. No one had COVID, but then my employees, a lot of them at the time, I probably had around maybe 25 or 30 employees at the time. Just little by little, they started coming to me and telling me that, oh, I'm scared for COVID. But that wasn't really the truth, because a lot of times, well, every single time, they would say, hey, I'm going to go home and collect for COVID. But if you want to pay me on the side, I'll come back to work and just pay me cash off the books. So that told me that it wasn't COVID. It was just that they were trying to look out for their own personal best interests. And they did not care what amount of suffering I was going through at the time. Losing my business, pretty much losing everything I ever built at that time. So as much as throughout those years that I had those employees, I always put them ahead with loans and keeping them out when I shouldn't, and Christmas parties and all that stuff, just always trying to be good to people. At the end, when it push come to shove, they pick themselves over me. I guess it's to be expected, right? Like I said, people are, this is a business transaction that you should look out for your own best interest. This is business. The smaller you are, the more you have to learn that, and learn that it's way more important to have the right people than it is to have people that like you there, or have people that you think are loyal to you. It's more important to have people that are the right fit for the job, the people who have the right attitudes, the people who are doing the job as a business transaction, just like you are, that treat it as such. If you can find those people, then those are the people you keep. Everybody else, or every other feeling that you have as far as the business goes, you have got to fight it, and you have to say to yourself, what's more important? Is it the company, or is it this human? And being that this is capitalism, it's always going to be the company. Amazon didn't get to the size that it is today because they picked their employees first. I'm not saying I want to be an Amazon, I just want to live a good life. But this is just one of those lessons that I wanted to try to tell people about. If you're just starting out, or if you have a small business and you think that your employees like you or love you, they do temporarily. Trust me, when my business fell, not one single employee called me and said, how are you doing? How's everything going? Are you able to feed your family? Not one person. Not one. And you know what? I shouldn't say that. Probably one person. Not that I can think about. And that's sad. So keep that in mind. Learn that from me. Like, it really does not matter. It's more about survival of the business, making sure the business is thriving, than anything else. So that's number one. Number two is just try to separate your emotions from your employees, and try to keep it all in perspective that this is a business transaction for as long as they're with you or they're gone. I remember reading a book that a man wrote named Earl Nightingale back in the day. He talked about the business transaction between the employer of the business and the employee, and I forget exactly what he said, but it dawned on me that that's a situation that's how you have to look at the situation. So when it comes down to employees, remember your business is number one, and then everything else. Um, I'm sure there's a lot of people, and I've met a lot of people in business who, having employees never, having employees that cared about them never affected them. For me, for some reason, throughout my business doings, I had a couple of business partners, and one of my business partners was really big on employees and them liking their employees. But I always think back. We had a hurricane and we had a natural disaster happen, and I don't think a single person reached out to that man and said, "Hey Jeff, how are you doing? How's everything going? How, you know, are you okay? Are you able to feed your?" No one ever called them. Not a single person. Neither did the customers. No one. So take that, take that for a grain of salt. But you know, for me at this point, I'm 42 years old. I've been, in business since I was 19 years old at this point, in one way or another. I think that it's a lesson learned. And I'm not saying this out of spite, or I'm not saying it because I'm hurt or anything like that. I'm saying it because I want to let people know that if you're in the situation that I'm in, where it's that person or the business, it's okay to pick that business. You know what I mean? It's okay to make yourself number one in that situation always, because ultimately, um, the self-interest of people, are always going to take precedent over yours. So just always keep that in mind. So, I don't blame anybody. I don't, I don't have any spite or you know, any ill will to any of my old employees. I've probably hired over 1,000 people over the last 20 years, to be honest with you. Um, just treat them with respect always, and treat them like you want to be treated. But at the same time, always keep in mind that, this is a business and there has to be that separation between yourself and them. All right. Again, this is Jose Hernandez. I'm just trying to put out some YouTube videos based on my knowledge of business. I am not a multimillionaire. I am speaking from a person who's just been working as a small business for a long period of time, who survived, who doesn't really work for anybody. He's always worked for himself, been able to put food on the table forever, working myself. And I think that I have some value to share with people that are in the same situation that I am. All right. So until the next video, I will catch you then.